Good morning. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Bersigar BG-1645. I paid £110 for this watch and I bought it from Amazon. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in. The watch box comes protected in this black cardboard outer sleeve which one removes, and inside one has a cardboard watch box which is well executed. On the watch box has a barcode sticker which says the watch is made in China. So Bersigar was previously known as Pagani Design. They've recently rebranded, and Pagani Design watches are exactly the same as Bersigar. This Bersigar BG-1645 is exactly the same as the Pagani Design PD-1645, which it succeeds. So inside the watch is protected by this piece of foam, and as you can see, the watch is well protected in transit by this foam which has a cutout in the shape of the watch. So very well executed cardboard watch box, bearing in mind the low price point of the watch at only £110. So looking at the watch, you can see it's clearly an homage to the Rolex Datejust 41mm. So I'll talk you through the other items that come with the watch. The watch also comes with a basic but informative owner's instruction manual, and it also details the international guarantee. I'm pleased to report that this Bersigar BG-1645 comes with a 12-month guarantee, so that's very reassuring. I bought the watch from Amazon, so it's also covered by an Amazon guarantee. Now, if you want to buy this watch at less expense than the Amazon prices, you can also buy Bersigar and Pagani Design watches from AliExpress. So it's worth comparing the prices on Amazon and also AliExpress if you want to buy one of these watches. The watch also comes with this Bersigar guarantee card, and as I bought the watch from Amazon, it's unstamped, but this is for a watch dealer or jeweler to fill in the date, the reference number of the piece, and stamp it with the watch dealer's branding. So nice to get that touch with a low tier price point watch. One also gets a jeweler's screwdriver, and I think it's a credit to Bersigar that they've included this. So if you're a collector without a set of watchmaking or jeweler's screwdrivers, you don't have to buy a set of screwdrivers to resize the Jubilee bracelet on the watch. I think it's always nice when a watch brand includes a screwdriver. This Jubilee bracelet has screw pins rather than push pins, so it's nice to be able to size the bracelet correctly oneself. Lastly, one also gets this microfiber Bersigar branded polishing cloth, and again I think it's a credit to Bersigar that they've included it, bearing in mind that it's a low tier price point piece. Nice to get accessories like a screwdriver and a polishing cloth with a watch. So with regards to the watch, as I've discussed, this is clearly an homage to the Rolex Datejust 41mm, and it has the rhodium dial. So firstly, just a word of caution, when I looked at this watch online, both on AliExpress and also Amazon, in the pictures Bersigar show this watch as having a black dial, but it's in fact more like a sunburst dark grey anthracite colour. It's a rhodium dial, so it's clearly meant to be an homage to the rhodium dial Datejust made by Rolex, but I just want you to be mindful of that, because in the pictures it does look black, but in reality it's rhodium rather than black. So it's a 42mm diameter case. Now the Rolex Datejust, which this is an homage to, is a millimetre smaller at 41mm, and it is noticeable. I would say to you that if you're a collector with a 6 to 7 inch wrist, this watch is going to wear too large on the wrist with too much heft. If you're a collector with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches, then the 42mm is going to be no problem whatsoever. The thickness is 12mm, so it's the same as a Rolex Datejust, including the screw down exhibition case back. It has a lug width of 20mm, as one would expect, and I think the 20mm lug width suits the Jubilee bracelet and also the proportions of the tapers of the 42mm case. Nicely executed fluted bezel which complements the screw down coin edge finished solid stainless steel crown. The stainless steel crown is signed with the Bersigar brand logo and it's very well finished. In terms of execution, the crown is very well made. The internal threading is satisfactory. The threading on the crown tube is silky smooth. So the screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters of water resistance. Also, the screw down exhibition case back provides a second hermetic seal to 100 meters of water resistance. So very well made watch. Now, I like the fact that one can unscrew that coin edge finished crown to manually top up the 40-hour power reserve of the Seiko NH35A movement. The movement has hand winding and hacking, and I think it's nice to be able to unscrew the crown to manually wind it, and also to stop the second hand dead, to hack the movement in order to set the time precisely to the second. So with regards to the rest of the specification, it's 100 meters water resistance, as I've discussed. It has a sapphire crystal on the front of the piece. On this screw down exhibition case back, it's glazed with a mineral crystal, as one would expect at this price point. And the watch does have heft, even though it's on a Jubilee bracelet. It weighs 140 grams. Now, that's quite heavy, even for a 42mm case. Bearing in mind that this is an homage to the Rolex Datejust, it is a big, heavy watch. So, really, I would reiterate that this watch is only suitable if you're a collector with a 7 to 8 inch wrist, because it's a large piece and it does wear with heft due to the 42mm case, which is 1mm larger than the Datejust. But having said that, it is incredibly comfortable due to the Jubilee bracelet. Now, in terms of finishing, the Jubilee bracelet is finished to a very good standard. It has flawless mirror polishing to the flanks of the Jubilee bracelet. The centre 3 links are also polished to a mirror finish, and the outer links are brushed into a satin finish, which complements the brushed satin finish of the end links. The end links are a good fit to the case, so with regards to the end link build quality, they are good. But however, I have to draw some criticism to the quality of the Jubilee bracelet overall, because there is a lot of slack. There's a lot of play between the links, as you can see. There's extra movement where the pin goes through the centre link. So it's a very loose and rattly bracelet. It reminds me very much of the Seiko SKX007 or SKX009 Jubilee bracelet. It has a lightweight feel to it and a lot of flex, and it really does feel like a very slack, sloppy bracelet. So yes, it's nice looking, it's nicely finished, but really in terms of the way it feels lightweight and poor quality. Has screw pins in the bracelet rather than push pins, so that's a nice feature, and I think it's a credit to Bersigar not to have used the less expensive option of push pins at this price point. The clasp is a copy of the Rolex Oyster clasp, and it has a flip block, as one would expect. In terms of the flip block action, it's got a very light click, but it is satisfactory. The execution, the build quality is good, the finishing of the mirror polishing is good, and it's nicely signed with the Bersigar brand logo, which is beautifully engraved. So very good finishing on the flip block clasp, which is meant to represent a Rolex Oyster clasp. And when one opens the Oyster style clasp, one can see the interior also has a similar brushed satin finish to the centre section and a mirror polishing to the rest of the interior. Now, one criticism I want to bring your attention to is the build quality, because if you look at the latching mechanism, the actual lock of that flip lock clasp, there's a lot of play where the outer section meets the interior. You can see there's a lot of wobble. And I think that's unacceptable at any price point to have that amount of articulation, that amount of play, because my concern would be the performance of that long term. How long is it going to last before the pin breaks? Because generally, if you get that amount of play, it's going to put extra shear force on the pin, and when the pin's in shear, eventually it's going to snap. So I wouldn't have confidence in that locking mechanism long term, so that's something I just want you to be mindful of. But with regards to the finishing and the rest of the execution, the hinge is reasonably tight, and also where the flip lock meets the end of the Jubilee bracelet, it's reasonably tight. So really my only concern is where that locking mechanism meets the interior of the clasp, as I've demonstrated. The rest of the bracelet is nicely finished, as is the interior. It doesn't have a glide lock extension because it's not a copy of the glide lock clasp, it's a copy of the Rolex Oyster clasp, so therefore it has a copy of the EasyLink extension, and as you can see, one can pop out the copy of the EasyLink to gain 5mm of extension on the Jubilee bracelet. The EasyLink extension itself is well executed, and although it does require a firm push to get it to pop out, and also snap back in, it does snap in securely, and there is minimal play in the EasyLink inside the clasp. So the EasyLink extension does work, it is functional. So I'll give you a wrist shot and then I will talk you through the rest of the specification of the piece. Now, I haven't sized this bracelet, I've simply taken it straight out of the box. And the Oyster style flip lock clasp, it does snap securely, and the flip lock does again provide an effective lock. So it is well executed in terms of its functionality. It fits my 8-inch wrist with no problems at all. As you can see, there is a gap, so it would actually fit just above an 8-inch wrist without removing any links. It's always nice to see a bracelet that will easily fit a 7 to 8-inch wrist, bearing in mind that this is a 42mm piece, so it's clearly a watch that's meant for collectors with a larger wrist rather than a smaller wrist. So what do I like about it? Well, I do like the rhodium sunburst finish to the dial, the symmetry of the applied indices, and also the baton style hands. They really do complement the stick indices very well. The fluted bezel is very well finished and it's very eye-catching. I also like the slight lip of the sapphire crystal which projects above the fluted bezel. Very aesthetically pleasing piece to look at on the wrist at an oblique angle. The mirror polishing to the 3 centre links of the Jubilee bracelet beautifully complements the fluted bezel, and also the mirror polishing to the flanks of the case. With regards to the finishing on the flanks of the case, they are finished to a flawless mirror finish, and one has to give due credit to Bersigar that they haven't cut any corners with regards to their quality control and the execution of the finishing of the case. Very nicely executed mirror polishing to the tops of the lugs. On the underside of the case, it's finished to a satin finish which complements the underside of the bracelet, which is also satin finish, and the satin finished end links. The screw down exhibition case back has a mirror polished finish to the edge of it, which is very well done, and it also has a brushed satin finish and engraved specifications around the centre section, which is mineral crystal glazed. So very well executed finishing to the piece, and I have to say, bearing in mind the price point of only £110, it is finished to a good standard overall. So what are the negatives? Well, another negative is the Cyclops magnifier. The Cyclops magnifier only provides 1.5 times magnification on the date complication at 3 o'clock. Now on a Rolex, the Cyclops magnifier provides 2.5 times magnification, so it's more effective in terms of its performance. The other criticism I have of the Cyclops magnifier applied to the flat sapphire crystal is that it's not perfectly central. The Cyclops magnifier is actually slightly offset. It's set slightly to the left, as you can see. It doesn't sit perfectly central over the date complication, so that's disappointing. It's something I think Bersigar could improve upon with regards to their build quality and quality control, the alignment of the application of the Cyclops magnifier. I really would like to see the Cyclops magnifier on the sapphire crystal perfectly central over the date complication rather than slightly off centre. But it's a minor criticism because it does do the job in magnifying the date window. With regards to those applied indices, they do give a nice 3D effect to the dial, and although this is clearly an homage to the Datejust, I think it's done very well. It is a good homage to the Datejust. The dial isn't over-branded with specification, it simply says Bersigar with the brand's logo and also 24 jewel automatic, and it does indeed use a 24 jewel Seiko NH35A as I've discussed. At the 6 o'clock position underneath the 6 o'clock index it says Japan movement, and that's true. This is something I want to give special credit to Bersigar for, the use of the Seiko NH35A. Now, Seiko produced the NH35A in 2 plants. They have a plant in Malaysia and also a plant in Japan. And one would expect the cost-cutting measure of using the Malaysian-made version rather than the Japanese-made version. But I'm pleased to report that Bersigar used the Japanese-made version of the NH35, which is a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. It's been used in a number of pieces over the years with no reliability issues reported whatsoever. It's better quality than the Seiko 7S26, which is used in the SKX 007, for example, because it has the advantage of hand winding and hacking. And I really think at this price point, to get a 24 jewel Seiko movement with hand winding and hacking is very good. Now, the negative to the movement is that it has a beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour. And the negative of that is the second-hand judders rather than sweeping smoothly. The industry standard beat rate for 4 Hz movements is 28,800 vibrations per hour, and that gives a nice smooth sweep to the second hand. The second hand is slightly too short as well. It doesn't quite reach the chapter ring for the minute marking ticks. So I would actually prefer if the baton hands for the hour and minute hand were slightly scaled up in proportion to better balance the proportion of the applied indices, and also if Bersigar had lengthened the second hand so that it extends fully to the chapter ring rather than just on the indices. So juddering second hand is a negative, but the movement itself is very reliable and durable. In terms of accuracy, the accuracy of the NH35A is stated as -20 seconds to +40 seconds per day. So it's not a particularly accurate movement, but I'm pleased to report that this one is running at +15 seconds per day, which is perfectly acceptable, bearing in mind that it is a £110 watch. So overall, what do I think of it? Well, I'll give you a Lume shot and then I will surmise the piece. Now, I'm not expecting the Lume to perform to exceptional standards, bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece, but I'll switch out the light and then I'll charge it up fully with my 100 LED torch, and you'll be able to see the Lume when it's charged to its peak performance. Right, so we're now in a fully darkened room, and as you can see, the Lume isn't glowing particularly brightly just from being charged by my LED strip light. But I'm going to charge it up fully using my 100 LED torch to the absolute maximum so we can see it performing at its peak performance. Right, so that's now fully charged. And as you can see, initially it does glow quite brightly with an aesthetically pleasing green tone. It reminds me of C3 Superluminova, but looking at the brightness I can tell that it's just Luminova rather than Superluminova, and it's certainly not C3. So it's fading and fading fast, and although the glow initially is quite bright, unfortunately on the baton style hands there's very little Lume applied, as one can see. So it's not glowing for any length of time, and I would actually describe the Lume as being very poor performance. It's certainly nothing like the quality of Lume on a Seiko 5, which uses Seiko LumaBright. Now, I think it's disappointing. Even though this is only £110, I really would expect to see better quality Lume than this. I think that Bersigar should apply more Lume and apply it thicker in order to improve the quality of the length of time it glows. So that's another negative, the weak Lume performance. But overall, I think that, bearing in mind the price point of the watch, it is acceptable to have some negatives. So just to surmise the watch, what do I think of it? Well, this is a watch that does have some positives and it does have some negatives. Overall, I would say that the positives outweigh the negatives, and I'm going to recommend it because I think it's very good to get a Seiko NH35A, which is made in Japan, used in a watch at this price point of only £110. I like the look of it. It's clearly an homage to the Datejust, but I think for £110 it is the best quality homage to a Datejust you can get at that price point. To get a screw down crown and screw down exhibition case back providing 100 metres of water resistance at this price point is very good. One often sees push-pull crowns at this price point. Now, the other thing I like to see at this price point is the use of solid end links. So the build quality and the finishing of the watch is very good, and although the Jubilee bracelet feels quite light and rattly like an SKX007 bracelet, it is aesthetically pleasing. It does complement the fluted bezel, and overall the watch is very good looking with that sunburst finish rhodium dial. So I'd simply say this: yes, it does have some shortcomings, as I've discussed. There is some play in the bracelet clasp, and also the quality of the bracelet. There is a lot of play in the rattly bracelet. But if you can live with those things and live with the fact the Cyclops magnifier is slightly off centre to the left, overall I think it is a good watch, and the build quality is acceptable because the execution of the screw down crown is very good, as I've discussed. So I like it. I think it's a good looking watch. I think it's good quality and well made. And when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, I like the watch to meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value. So at £110, this certainly is excellent value. Is it excellent quality? No, it's good quality. There are some shortcomings, but there are also some merits. So On balance, I think that it is a good watch in terms of build quality and quality control for the price point. One has to accept at £110 one is going to get some negatives and some issues. Overall, I think it's a nice watch and I recommend it. So I hope you've liked my review of this Bersigar BG-1645. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.